Peter King of the MMQB.com joining me and Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, PK?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing fine.
Peter.
So,
hey, Albert.
Peter, what can be done about this? What is the solution to the preseason conundrum in which star players year after year after year are going down in these games?
I think there's a couple of things, Rich. I think, number one, I've said this for a long time, I think the solution to the preseason in general is to make it 2 games long. And then if you want to if you want to have your players, especially your rookies, your young players, exposed in maybe one other way, then you schedule scrimmages, say with the bottom 40 guys on your roster. And for instance, the Buffalo Bills go and play the Browns, or the Browns go and play the Lions. Buffalo Bills or the Cleveland Browns and the Detroit Lions play at the stadium at Bowling Green. The Bengals and the Titans play halfway between themselves halfway between the teams at the University of Kentucky, let's say.
Like a barnstorm.
Yeah, but I'm saying that and what you do is people can come in and watch the scrimmage for free or for $5 or whatever it is. And but my point is I think that first of all, not only have the games as spectacles outlived their usefulness, because the only game that anybody truly does care about, the games are this weekend. There will be 16 games that will be remotely meaningful. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the games, they're meaningful for guys making and not making the team, so that does have meaning. But as spectacles, they're basically designed so the coaches can see these guys and they can decide who our seventh offensive lineman is, who's our fifth defensive back, or whatever. And so, but I just think that to expose guys to injuries in a lot more ways. I'm beginning to think that Adrian Peterson and the Vikings do it the best. The guy just never takes the field in the preseason because no good can come of it.
Well, Peter, how about this? I mean, one thing I've gotten over the last couple of weeks talking to coaches about this is the idea that joint practices could actually wind up being a replacement for preseason games. Yeah. Most of the coaches I've talked to, and they've been doing this over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen more of it because of the CBA and the way it's set up. The joint practices, they're actually getting more out of those sessions, whether they're 2 days, 3 days, than they are out of any preseason game. I mean, ultimately, I guess part of this would have to be about monetizing it to some degree to replace the money that they would lose if they cancel preseason games.
I'd say this, Albert. So, in other words, we just have if you were the Green Bay Packers, all right, I think I'm right in saying this. We'd have to look, but the Green Bay Packers in fiscal year 2014 made $220 million in national revenue from the NFL. So in other words, television, sponsorship, advertising, their cut of the pie was $220 million. So you're going to lose, each team is basically going to lose about $1 million from not playing one home preseason game, okay? So the Green Bay Packers, what that means is that I think, we'd have to look this up too, but they made like $45 million profit running the Green Bay Packers team store. Okay, so take $1 million away from that. And if you want to do something else, they've proven in Green Bay that they know how to bring people for events into Lambeau Field. Do something else. Have a flag football game with Brett Favre and Don Majkowski being the quarterbacks. I don't know. But, really, this is about, you think the Green Bay Packers right now would trade $1 million to have Jordy Nelson back for the season?
There's no question
I don't know what's going to happen with Jordy Nelson for sure, but obviously the answer to that is pretty obvious.
Peter King, the MMQB, also from NBC Sports, along with Albert Breer, here's in studio. Peter on the phone with me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So, Peter, how serious is the NFL about doing something like this?
Well,
is there a sense of urgency?
Roger Goodell is basically on record as saying he wants to cut the preseason to 3 games per team. I mean, to me, that's a half solution. I mean, it's better than playing 4, but it's still a half solution. And whether the NFL is going to do something about it, look, it requires 24 votes. It would require a lot of leadership from Park Avenue, to be sure. But I don't think everybody said, well, geez, they're not going to want to give up that $1 million paycheck. I mean, look, everybody in a given year, the Green Bay Packers would vote in a second to cut it to 2 games now. I guarantee you. And I think a lot of teams would. And I just think sometimes if you asked anybody 5 years ago, would you ever move the PAT back so that it'd be a 33-yard field goal instead of 20? You'd say, no, that's not going to happen. You'd bust up tradition. Well, the NFL convinced them, whether it's right or wrong, I think it's right to move the PAT back, and I'm sure that it wouldn't be impossible to convince NFL teams once the league office got behind it to change it from 4 to 2.
I'd make the argument, too, Peter, that if you want to talk about how this affects the competitive structure of a football team, this is the only level of the sport where there's this extensive a preseason. In high school, and I covered high school football for a long time, you have controlled scrimmages and the joint practice format. In college, everything is intra-squad. You do have scrimmages, but everything is intra-squad. This is the only level of the sport where there is a preseason that is this extensive.
Well, I mean, this is the only sport where preseason games have that sort of attention and also any sort of revenue stream, as you said. The question is what's to be done about it, and once the games start on September 10th, this is an issue that gets put way in the back burner. I don't know who's talking about the preseason and what to do with it once there are actual regular season games going on. And in that regard, Peter, with your MMQB today on themmqb.com, what's the deal with Peyton Manning's fingers? You said he has loss of feeling in his fingers and has been dealing with that for quite some time. Is that the case, Peter?
I mean, that to me was incredible. He told me the other day that he has no feelings in the fingertips on his right hand. And that really is probably the biggest reason of all why he started wearing the glove, especially in inclement weather. There may be games this year where he won't wear the glove, but he'd have to have a great tactile feel with the rest of his hand on the football. Rich, you know what's amazing to me? I mean, when he had feeling in his fingertips, he averaged 27 touchdown passes a year. Now that he doesn't have feeling in his fingertips the last 3 years, he's averaged 43. I mean, come on. It's either that argues that every quarterback should wear a glove, or I don't know what it argues, but I find that pretty amazing.
It's like Jordan having the flu.
He's better when he's sick.
I mean, it just seems like your fingertips would be a pretty vital part to throwing the ball.
Well, maybe that means...
You know what else was interesting, Rich?
Sure.
I'll tell you what I found really interesting about my conversations in Denver. John Elway really has a little bit... You could tell, reading the stuff I wrote today, he has a little bit of guilt about having Peyton Manning take the $4 million haircut in the offseason. And he just, he said things like, I hope one day he'll understand we're trying to do the best thing for the team. But you can tell because he was in the fraternity of quarterbacks, and I'm sure he had some decisions made for him that he didn't like all the time. But I thought that was really interesting. And, to me, I think Elway feels like, especially if he goes out and gets a veteran guard before the start of the season, which he may do, because, how amazing is this? As of right now, the left tackle, left guard, and center on the Denver Broncos who are running with their first team, none of them have ever played a snap in the NFL.
Peter King joining me here on the phone, Albert Breer in studio. Peter, you spoke to Jarryd Hayne, the Australian rugby star, who has certainly use the preseason to his advantage, to say the least. Does he make the 49ers, Peter?
I think he is now. And look, I'm not as plugged in as guys like Matt Barrows and Matt Mayoko are, who cover the 49ers. But I noticed last night, I think both of them, at least one of them tweeted that performance last night probably clinched a spot on the roster. I mean, look, if 5 punt returns, 21 yards a punt, he's incredibly he's incredibly fit, I think, to be a punt returner because so many of those things, you saw his fingertip catch running with his back to the ball.
Sure.
He caught it like somebody compared it to Willie Mays, and they're right. I mean, caught it over his shoulder, and then he even knows, because he's used to this in rugby, that when a guy is approaching him from the right, shift the ball from your right to left hand and use a straight arm with the guy with your right hand, which he did on that long punt return yesterday. And I think that he's playing special teams well enough. I think he's going to make the team, Rich.
Certainly if he gives Kaepernick a shorter field. I mean, that's a major benefit moving forward here. You know, before I let you go, Peter, and Albert, you're going to stay in another segment here in studio. RichEisenShow.com, the poll question based on the fact that there are some receiver needs maybe in the National Football League, and we all know that at Carolina and Green Bay, should they need to, which we all expect, they say they're going to replenish from within, from their roster. Chris Brockman asked Peter and Albert the poll question at RichEisenShow.com.
Which out-of-work veteran wideout would you rather have? Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, Reggie Wayne.
Peter, you first.
I'll take Reggie Wayne because he's played most recently, and because he's hungry, very hungry to show the Colts that they made a mistake.
I'll take Wayne because I think that his game's more adaptable when you get older. It's less based on just overwhelming physical ability the way Owens and Moss were. Wayne had to be crafty, and look, I think most people that you talk to in the league think he's lost his explosiveness, lost most of his athleticism. But if you look at Reggie Wayne as a player, he's had to do more over the course of his years to make it work, and I think that kind of player lasts longer.
And our friend Adam Schefter just to tweet now that Reggie Wayne and New England Patriots, 1-year deal.
It's a tough one for Colts fans to swallow, probably.
Yeah, but, you could kind of see that coming. I think Adam wrote about that last week or whenever, and I think one of the things that Bill Belichick is very good at with these veterans is he will figure out how many snaps a game he can use them and how exactly that he should use them. And he's done that with veterans at all positions better than anybody in football.
And plus, clearly, Peter, I mean, the adjustment will have to be is catching a football with lower PSI. I mean, we all know the way Andrew Luck likes the ball, right, Peter?
Some would say.
I mean, that might be
It's going from 13 to 12.5,
I mean, think about
That's
that.
an adjustment.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Peter, thanks for calling. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, take care.
We've got it, the MMQB.com for the latest on Peter King.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.